Well, hello everybody, good evening. Welcome to this very special event presented by the Wheeler Centre and the State Library Victoria as part of the Salon Series, which celebrates the most exciting thinkers and writers and poets and performers at work today. The series works the idea of hidden histories and the artists who uncover untold stories and perspectives. I'm Ramona Koval and I'm your host for this evening, and I'd like first to acknowledge that this event is taking place on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay respects to their elders past and present. And we're going to start this evening with a short poetry performance by Flora Chol, and then I'm going to have a conversation with Geraldine Brooks here with her new novel Horse, which was a New York Times bestseller as soon as it was published at the start of the month. And you'll have some time for audience questions too. So be thinking of those as you listen to our conversation. And then we're going to have a musical performance from Mindy Meng Wang. Then you'll be invited, this just goes on, all the riches happening, to purchase copies of Geraldine's books, and thanks to Reading's books, and Flora's book you can get by writing to her website, but she's got an anthology there that she's got a poem in that's for sale. And Mindy has some things for you too. So it's just going to be wonderful shopping afterwards as well. So you've probably already had some wine, which has been generously provided tonight by De Bortoli Wines of the Yarra Valley. So that's what's happening. That's what's happened. We've got to turn off our mobile phones now because that's going to be so embarrassing if it's yours that goes off. And we're going to just enjoy this evening of poetry and music and intellectual and emotional stimulation. So first to Flora Chol. She's a Melbourne-based South Sudanese writer, poet and activist. Flora came to Australia as a humanitarian refugee in 2003. In May 2019, Flora published her first book, Tomorrow's Dream, and her work examines growing up as a young South Sudanese woman in the Australian diaspora. She's currently completing her Master of International Community Development at Deakin University and writing her first children's book with Scribe Publications. Please welcome Flora Chol.
Wow, what an introduction. You know, it's when you sit down and you listen to all the things that you've done as a writer or, you know, as a person like me, just, you know, a regular mom of two, and you belittle the things that you do, but when you're sitting down and you're listening, you're like, damn, I'm pretty awesome, am I not? So thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Ramona, I'm very honored and very excited to be here tonight. I'm also very excited to be sharing the stage with Geraldine Brooks and Mindy. I do hope that I give justice to you all tonight and you enjoy listening to my poetry. So I have my book here. It's called Tomorrow's Dream. I haven't got any copies of it here, unfortunately, but you can get a copy on my website. Before I get started, I'd like to, you know, acknowledge that, you know, as a refugee on these lands, my respects will always be to the traditional custodians, and I kind of like to look at myself as a guest on stolen lands. As we know that sovereignty hasn't been ceded, we are only just a guest here, and our stories, our histories of belonging, they do not just start with us, they start with the people that were long before us. So I'm going to recite some of my poetry from my mind, and I'll be able to share from my book. Please feel free. I love an interactive audience. If you're really enjoying the words, or, you know, they just make you feel some type of way, just get into it, like, you know, snap your fingers as we do in the spoken word scene, or just scream out, like, who cares? When I'm here, I tell myself to take everything that's mine and never look back. When I'm here, I tell myself to take this rippling wind and trap it in my suitcase. I'm taking this wind and I'm packing my lungs with it because my time here is short. I have given so much of which I thought was mine to give. In seeking new opportunities, I forged journeys across seas I had never seen before. Yet even in the land of opportunity, I have been greeted with hostility and prejudice. Australia, where is the hospitality? I'm taking this earth, grain for grain, brown against the brown of my skin, and I'm polishing my skin with the blood and wisdom of our ancestors, so that if I ever forget who I am or where I'm from, or that if I'm told that I should just go back to where I belong or where I'm from, I will always remember that I have a part of home with me. I'm taking these peaks and the foundations of these mountain peaks with me, and I'm not giving them back. So that if I'm ever told that I should just go back to where I'm from, I will always remember that I am from the land of the tall, I'm from the land of the brave. I'm taking this earth, brown for brown, grain for grain, brown against the brown of my skin, and I'm polishing my skin with the blood and sacrifices of my ancestors. And I'm not giving it back, so that if I ever forget where I'm from, who I am, I will always remember that I have a part of home with me, and what a beauty it is to be the color of this very earth. What a beauty it is to be the color of this very home. Home is where I belong. What a beauty it is to be the color of the earth. Thank you. When they ask me who I am, I tell them I am from the land. I'm from the land of 1,000 blistering suns. Suns for many decades have risen over scorching deserts. I'm the land of generations long gone, a new era where ancestors are reborn, reincarnated into cultivated thinkers. Thinkers that are still chained by systems of oppression, corruption, and destruction. When they ask me who I am, I tell them that I'm the land of flowing rivers, rivers that trail far and beyond, connecting valleys of forgiveness, hope, and redemption. When they ask me who I am, I tell them that I'm the land of vast vegetation, the land where majestic beasts are continuously decimated into lifeless limbs that now hang as false trophies in the living rooms of privileged lives. When they ask me who I am, I tell them I am the land who has birthed many sons and daughters, yet I watch them return to me each day in blood, bone, and soil. When they ask me who I am, I tell them that I am the silent land, I'm the silent mother, listening to the cries of my children and the whispers of thanks from those who survived to live and tell of another day. When they ask me who I am, I tell them that I'm the land of bloodstained legacies, histories, and regimes of courage that were supposed to yield periods of peace, prosperity, and unity. I am the silent mother. I am the silent land. I'm the mother who has birthed many sons and daughters, yet watched them return to me in blood, bone, and soil. I'm the land whose anthem is hope, for I will always sing hope for the future. I am South Sudan. Thank you. I don't know if my set's over yet, but I got about 2 more, 3 more, and I'll share them if that's okay with everybody. How's everyone feeling? Good. Like 60%, 70% of the audience is like wearing masks, so I can't really see if my performance is shit because I don't know if anyone is smiling at me. But yeah, I think you're too cute. I'll read one more. Actually, 2 more from my book over here. I'll go page 30, Letter to the Subconscious Self. Talk to me about everything and anything. Don't stop at nothing. I want to know of what you know of this world, what you know of the patterns and the constellations of the stars, the stride of splendid beasts upon the land, the grain of sand out of millions, the pulse of the universe in the palm of your hand, how the earth opens up to make room for the sprout of a new seed, a new idea, new possibilities. Tell me how it all came to be, how we came to be just here right now. Tell me your deepest thought, what you think behind closed doors, how you feel in the space of now. And tomorrow when you must face reality, when all the glitter has left, and when all the glitter has settled, and all you have left is seeking solace in the spaces of sorrow. Come to me as bare as the day the universe had conceived of the miracle that is you. Just as you are, just as you should be, I'm ready to receive you with my hands wide open. My heart is open to you. Breathe life into me with your awesome presence. Make me believe once more in the idea that is me. Tell me about your fears in the things near and the things left in the chapters of the past. Show me the pathway to your carefully crafted lifestyle. Teach me your ways. Show me how it all came to be. For I have ventured through vast wilderness for what seems like a lifetime, yet I cannot find ease elsewhere, only in the magic that is you. Come to me as the day the miracle, come to me the day as the universe had conceived of the miracle that is you. This life's adventure has just begun. Thank you. So I wrote this poem, Letter to the Constant, I can't talk today. Letter to the Subconscious Self, I think in 2018 when I was on a writer's retreat in Vietnam. And it's interesting, at the time when I wrote it, I thought that I kind of thought I was a love poet, even though I'm really not a love poet. But now that I think back to it, I've actually got some poems in my book that have some Dinka words, which is my native language. So sometimes I kind of play around with both. Like English is sort of like my second language, but I've been speaking it for so many years that I kind of play around with both of the languages. Yeah, so when I wrote the poem, I thought it was a love poem, but now I'm a mother of two, so I read the poem and I'm like, that was my soul talking to my kids then. So yeah, it was really lovely to read that. I think I'll share one more, and then if time is good, I'll squeeze another one in. It's on my phone. It's fairly new, so it's not in my book just yet. I want to start the day with a new name for a new day that says, don't call me strong. A name that says, I'm here to stay, say my name. Don't call me a strong black woman. Call me soft, call me delicate, call me precious, and plant kisses on my forehead and gently lay me down on a bed of moss and roses. Though all I may know is a bed of thorns or nightmares of anxiety, my sleep will now know nothing short of tranquil if you call me by my God-given name. Don't call me strong. Today I affirm that I am perfect and I am imperfect in all that I am. I am the final product of the hopes and dreams of the ancestors who moved kingdoms to make queendoms of us so that we may birth generations to sing a new anthem of a new name. For I am not here to tame or to be tamed. I'm here in my God-given glory, raging and roaring to unleash all that's been hidden within so that I could fit in. Call me by my God-given name. Let your tongue twist, turn till the vowels and consonants iron out the unfamiliarity on your tongue, so that when my name rolls off the tip of your tongue, I will stand and answer to my God-given name. Don't call me strong. I want an existence of peace, and I will still slay the beast if you call me strong. I may be in a season of treacherous rains, raging storms, and rugged terrains, but I will answer to my new name. I will answer to my God-given name. I will not dare look at my feet. I will unbow my head, and I will not accept the defeat that's been falsely placed upon me at my new destination. I will emerge from the ashes of my fears with flames of hope, and I will honor my shame, and I will honor my pain, and I will honor my new name. Call me by my God-given name. Don't call me a strong black woman, because that is not all that we are. We are stars at the corner of our eyes, sparkly lipstick, blistering white teeth. I made that last part up. I made that last part up. Oh, that was fun. I made it up, but did you guys tell that I made it up? See? I think that's it. I don't know if one more. Why not, Geraldine? One more. So this one is fairly new, so I feel very excited to be sharing it with you all tonight. I wrote this for the ASRC's poetic anthology called Our Stories, and it's called Homesickness, and it's about during the pandemic I felt really homesick, and and I was just thinking like what it would be like to go back home to be with my family again, and it was pretty tough, but I was like, there's no way I can give justice to this feeling that I have right now, only to just, write about it. So I'm going to recite it, because I can't find it on my phone. Yeah. The funny thing about being in two places at once is not knowing what to do with the pain that it brings to your heart, though it may even transcend a lifetime. You may even be in the right place just at the wrong time. How could it be that I am homesick for a place that may even be foreign to me, despite everything about me being visible on the one image, everything about me being visible of each side of the one mirror? When I'm here, I'm reminded that I do not belong. And when I'm here, I'm reminded that I am home. And the question is that home should never hurt, but it hurts to be here. When day comes, things will cease to hurt no more, because I will slick my hair back in my grandmother's shea nut oil, while the sun's rays melt the oil down my scalp, down my neck to the grooves of my back. My auntie would part my hair to braid it, and the gentle hands that raised me would secure each strand of my hair that was once astray, strand for strand, until every being of my body that was once astray will once again come back to me, and I will come back to the home of my very own body, the home that I have fought so hard to evict myself to save myself from the pain within. I will come back to the home of my very own body. One day, my tears will form an endless stream, a stream that will reach God. And you know what God will tell me? God will tell me that only I can drink from the cup of my very own misery. Only I can turn my tears into seeds. Only I can turn my tears into pearls. Only I can plant the seeds of my life and nourish the soil of my body. When day comes, things will cease to hurt no more. We will all sit beneath the hut of the canopy my uncle built for us, and we would drink tea that's too sweet to be tea. We would drink tea that doesn't taste like twigs dancing in bland water, and we would all create memories of a lifetime. We would all create memories of home, no matter which side of home we may belong to. And I will come back. I will come back to the home of my very own body and the pain that I have been working so hard to hide myself from. I will face it head on, and I will say, I'm here, I'm home, and I'm ready to conquer. Thank you.
Thank you, Flora. Well, do you want to come up now? Well, it now gives me great pleasure to welcome to the stage Geraldine Brooks. And as you will hear as soon as she opens her mouth, she's an Aussie. An Aussie made good with a stellar career as a journalist, a reporter for the Sydney Morning Herald, and then a foreign correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. But we're here tonight mostly for her second stellar career as a writer of non-fiction books and as a novelist. And if you've read Geraldine Brooks, you know she's a serious researcher. She's a writer interested in history, and more than that, in bringing the stories, the hidden histories, to light with her empathetic imagination. She's got an ability to make you feel as a reader as if you're there, whether her books are set, whether it be in ancient Jerusalem with King David, or in Sarajevo in the 14th century, or in America before the Civil War, which is partly where her new book Horse is set. And it's a book that weaves together three stories that exist in three different times, and all of them depend on the existence of the true story of the record-breaking 19th century thoroughbred Lexington, who became America's greatest stud sire. What an unusual topic for a novel. But it's a novel of art and science and love and obsession and the powerful bond between people and animals and our unfinished reckoning with race and injustice. So welcome back to Australia, Geraldine.
Whoa. Well, I am so happy to be home, and I'm even more happy to be home with Ramona. So,
Well, before we get to Horse, I wanted to approach you side on, which is how a horse whisperer I met once told me about getting the confidence of a frisky horse. That you come along on the side, you don't like front them up and just sort of go straight ahead.
well, in front of a horse is the least good place to see you clearly, because the way they look at the world is this way, almost to their tail, and this way almost to their tail, but directly in front, they can't see you very well.
But I think they get very nervous if something approaches from them. Because I would.
Yeah, and also if you're a horse, something's coming, and if it's us, it's a predator.
Yeah,
potentially.
Exactly. So that, I don't want to make you feel like that. So I was reading some of your journalism and reporting from war zones, where you had to make sort of the vistas of war and misery vivid to people reading in the morning newspapers in their comfortable lives in Washington and beyond. I wondered what the role of storytelling in your reporting then was.
I think for me, the objective was always to tell the stories one at a time, and particularly to make that emotional connection with one person, because we can feel for the Ukrainians, but when you hear the story of one Ukrainian mother trying to protect her individual child. So I was always looking for the one that would be the one that would, penetrate the consciousness and make people feel, yes, this is somebody like me, I can identify with that person.
And what lessons from journalism were transferable to your work now as a remarkably successful and beloved writer of historical fiction?
Well, it's two different ways it's helpful. One is that being a reporter makes you incredibly unprecious about writing. Reporters don't have writer's block. There's a very dim view of that in the newsroom. You cannot tell your desk that your aura wasn't unstraight today, or that the muse was unarriving. You just have to write something. And I think that bringing that into fiction is an incredibly important thing, because I have a friend who's a sculptor. She's quite a wonderful sculptor. Her name's Sarah Z. And somebody asked her about her process once, and she said, "My process is mess, 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 art." And I love that, because we can all make a mess every day. can't make art every day. Nobody can make art every day. But if you make that mess, then you've got something to work with, and you're working towards the art. So, so that's one way in which journalism feeds what I do now. But it also, I think, I wouldn't be able to write these novels if I hadn't had the incredible responsibility and privilege that you have as a foreign correspondent, where you barge into people's lives at a time of crisis when things are all going south in their country, and there's some kind of civil uprising or war or famine or something happening that has caused you to be there, and you can't ever unsee or unfeel the sadness that you witness. And it's always going to be with you. I always think of the William Blake poem, "What is the price of experience? Do men buy it for a song, or wisdom for a dance in the street? No, it is bought with the price of all that a man has." And it's not, for a journalist, it's not all you have. I mean, you get off at a discount because you get to leave, but you carry a lot of it with you. And for me, it's a responsibility to use what I learned.
So, writing historical fiction, you mean this is what you love to do. And tell me about the difference between sort of writing history and writing historical fiction. I mean, I ask this because in Australia, I'm still reading academic papers that sort of turn up of the sort of horror of historians when the success of historical fiction writers just makes them feel really pissed off because nobody reads their histories as much as they read fiction that appeals to them about historical events. Is there a tension there?
If you want to piss off a historian, put them in your acknowledgements.
Tell me about that. Tell me a story about that.
Oh, I don't know. I mean,
you don't have to name names, but tell me a story.
I was really, I like to get it right. I really do, and I work very hard to follow the line of fact as far as I can. And in my first novel, I wanted the local minister in this English village to have a copy of Avicenna's medical textbook. And I didn't know if that was plausible or not. And lo and behold, I find that there's this wonderful paper on the libraries of 17th century rural clergymen in Britain. And sure enough, in one of the libraries there it was, so I could do that. And so I acknowledged this guy. And then later on I ran into him and it was like, he got so much shit from his colleagues.
because he was in your book? Or
because he was acknowledged in a historical novel.
In a mere novel.
Yeah.
But people enjoy reading novels, don't they? And
well, I hope so. Otherwise, my kids will be going hungry.
But they do really enjoy being sort of bathed in the moment in a way that you can't in a history.
Look, I think of myself as the gateway drug to history, and I hope that somebody reads the novel and then they'll want to find out, well, what really happened, So hopefully that will send them, to the other half of the family business, which was my late husband, Tony Horwitz, who actually writes the truth.
Well, we are going to get onto horse very soon.
Yeah, no hurry.
Just on this sort of
He can wait in the stable. He's got hay.
This idea, in your 2011 Boyer Lectures, you said, "I know next to nothing about Homer, who he was, how he lived, yet I feel he knows my heart, separated by 3,000 years by gender and culture and geographic space. This ancient shadow is able to put words to the feelings that I have on a sunny day in a little island." So do you think that the human heart hasn't changed enough for you to not get things right about how people were in the past?
So this is the great dividing line between historical novelists, and I've had a lot of arguments on various panels everywhere from Cheltenham to Chennai. And it's a pretty strict divide. The ones who say, so it's same or different. Are we the same? Are we different? Can you know the consciousness of somebody who lived 100 years ago, or God help us, in the Second Iron Age? And of course, Henry James famously said, you can't, and that any attempt to write about a period more than 50 years removed from your own is worthless and should not even be attempted. And the first time I read that, I went downstairs from my study and poured myself an adult beverage. But then, he had written that to a novelist in Maine called Sarah Orne Jewett, who had sent him a manuscript to comment on, and I thought, oh God, how did she take it? And I looked up her biography, and it turned out that that novel she sent to Henry James was the last one she ever wrote. That's what I thought. But then I looked a bit further into her life, and it turned out that just after that correspondence, she had a grave carriage accident and was badly injured and died very soon after that.
So it wasn't his fault entirely?
Well, I started to imagine Sarah and the carriage and Maine in spring and the mud and the slide of the horse's hooves and the disarray of starched skirts and the crunch of breaking bones when she landed. And I thought, well, a pox on you, Henry James, because this is what the business is imagining. I was in Sarah Orne Jewett's shoes in that moment. And it didn't matter that it was a carriage and a starched long dress. What mattered was the fear and the frustration when she wasn't able to write after that, and the dread when she sensed death approaching. And I don't think that would be any different for me than it was for her. And I think that that's what doesn't change, is the strong emotions, love and hate and wanting to live and wanting to see your children live. And I don't think they're any different for somebody living in a city or somebody in South Sudan in a Dinka village, or, and it was something I heard a lot as a foreign correspondent. Oh, they're really different. The Israelis would say the Palestinians are different to us. And the Palestinians would say it about the Israelis, and white South Africans would say it about black South Africans, and it was never true. It was never once true. Sound of a mother crying over a dead child was exactly the same in a Jerusalem salon as it was in a Gaza refugee camp. So I think we are, the same. I think you can count on it.
Pat Barker told the Paris Review, well, you see, this is what we have in common with the Bronze Age or World War I. We have these bodies that have actually not evolved during that time, as far as we know. The truth of the body was for her the most important route to the historical past. And, when you describe a fall off a horse, and you know what that's like, and anyone who's fallen over in the supermarket like I've just done recently knows that the idea that the earth comes up to meet you, when I read that in your book, I thought, she has fallen. That is what it's like.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got a horse when I was 53. That was the first time I rode. I do not recommend this. Much better to start when you're a little girl and you're 5 years old and you fall off and you bounce and you can get back on. So I got this horse, and
But it was a really ornery horse, though.
She was not ornery. She was just used to a different style of riding.
Like competent?
Yes, exactly. No, she was a Mexican ranch horse, and I was, as they say in the equestrian world, over-mounted.
What does that mean?
It means that the horse is too good for you. Oh, yeah. Anyway, that horse, I hasten to say, went on to have a highly successful career with a young barrel racer. That was the kind of riding she understood. Anyway, I fell off, and the ground was so much harder than I expected it to be. And my instructor comes over and says, we usually try to get back on. And I said, yes, I'm on the ground. Yes, I said, I will. And then she said, but you have to stand up first. And that proved to be a problem.
And what had you broken?
I'd broken a bone I didn't even know existed called a superior remus.
In your hip?
Yeah, in pelvis, yeah.
But really, I mean, I know you say you didn't really get on a horse till you were 53, but you have degrees in political science and fine arts.
That doesn't help with the horse.
No, hang on. I haven't finished yet, though. And when you started in journalism on the horse racing beat,
Yes,
of all
right.
beats, of all gin joints in the world, you walked into the horse racing.
Isn't that a funny thing? You know, I was thinking, what am I going to do with all this knowledge I have about the importance of the subconscious in Kandinsky and Clay, you know, and classical political theory from Plato to Hobbes, while I'm sitting here taking down the details on the odds at the Randwick racetrack.
But did you find it intrigued you at all?
No,
was
it
was
horrified me because
Yeah.
the truth of modern horse racing is the abuse of equines is unforgivable. I mean, I saw so many horses destroyed in just that 4 months that I was doing that beat, and it's a bloody, shocking business when you're up close to it. And I had PTSD about it, and I didn't go anywhere near the racetrack till I was researching this book.
Humans and horses have been cooperating for thousands of years.
The first artistic images we have of horses, you know, people have been attracted to these gorgeous animals.
That's right. I've seen them in caves in
Yeah.
France and Spain. But, you know, horses help human empires conquer their foes. Once you got on them
Yeah,
and found you could cover territory.
exactly, yeah.
So tell us about the idea for this book and how it presented itself.
Well, it was, I had this horse, and the thing was, there's a syndrome called horse craziness, and I became afflicted with it, and it was all I wanted to think about was horses and becoming a better rider and learning about horse care and getting better at horse care. And it was impinging on my day job, which was writing about King David. And sadly, there are no horses in Second Iron Age Israel. Well, there are a few, but hardly any. So I couldn't actually explore it in fiction, and I wasn't getting a lot of writing done. And horses are pretty expensive, so it was the red ink was starting to overtake the family balance sheet. And then I'm at a lunch at Plymouth Pawtuxet Museum, which is a living history museum about early English settlers and Wampanoag inhabitants during the Plymouth colonization enterprise. And across the table, a couple of seats down, was a gentleman from the Smithsonian who was telling his lunch companions how he'd just delivered the skeleton of the most famous racehorse of the 19th century from an attic in the Smithsonian in Washington to pride of place in an exhibit in the International Museum of the Horse in Kentucky, where the full story of the grandeur of this racehorse and his significance and what happened during the Civil War. And I'm leaning forward, and my salad is uneaten, and I'm saying to my luncheon companion, could you just quiet down, because I just need to hear about this horse. And I knew that I had the topic for my next book, and I was able to convince my publisher of that. So all was well, and I was able to combine my new interest with my day job. So.
All right. Well, tell me about Jarrett, and tell me what led to this character.
So I was just going to write a story about a racehorse, and as the minute I started to research the horse, I learned of the absolutely integral role of the expertise of black horsemen in the thoroughbred industry in 19th century America. And you can't overstate what an obsession horse racing was at the time. It was a passion that spanned north and south. It spanned all classes of people. It spanned black and white. Everybody was intrigued with this because it was a very agrarian country still, and everybody had horses or were one generation removed from it. And the fascination with the great thoroughbred racehorses. There were 3 newspapers just devoted to it, and they had high circulation. So I forgot the question.
Jared, we're talking about
Jared. So to realize that this industry was built on the plundered labor of black horsemen who were either enslaved or formerly enslaved, and I knew that I couldn't, turn away from that. I was going to have to address it in the novel because the first trainer of Lexington was a formerly enslaved man named Harry Lewis. And at the end of the horse's life, there's a painting that was described as the best painting that this equestrian painter had ever made, and it was of Lexington being led out by Black Jarrett, his groom. And, if you spend time with horses, it's not the owners, it's not the trainers, it's not the jockeys, it's the grooms that have the closest relationship with the horse. And so I became intrigued with Jarrett and tried to find out more about him. And there wasn't a lot. There was some records of when he started to get paid after the Emancipation Proclamation, but nothing about what it was like to be him. So that was where the novelist's imagination came in. So.
And you've got these different time frames too. Tell me about why you didn't leave it there.
Oh, well, I always knew that there'd be a contemporary strand to the novel because I was so intrigued by the science at the Smithsonian and how you prepare bones and how you articulate a skeleton and the research that's done around that. So I knew that there'd be a contemporary character who was a Smithsonian scientist. And then when I went to the Smithsonian, they showed me a painting of the horse that had come to the Smithsonian in a bequest, but it was an incredibly strange provenance because the bequest, the rest of the paintings in it were edgy contemporary art. They were de Koonings and they were Pollocks and Bridget Rileys, and they were the collection of a gallerist from the 1950s called Martha Jackson, who was a pioneering feminist woman gallerist who supported all the most cutting edge and experimental artists of her day. So why did she have this portrait of a 19th century racehorse? A traditional oil portrait. Why was that in her collection? So that became the third strand. And because I was going to have the contemporary strand, I thought I can't leave the story of racism and slavery as if it's something that's over and done with, because it's clearly not. And the jackhammer noise of racial injustice was particularly loud while I was writing this book. George Floyd was murdered. Breonna Taylor was shot in her own bed. Ahmaud Arbery was gunned down jogging, and on and on and on. So many, many people unjustly killed because of the legacy of racism and enslavement. And, people like to say, why are you banging on about slavery? That's so long ago. But in living memory, kids in Virginia, black kids, were deprived of an education for 4 years because Virginia closed its public schools rather than integrate them. And that was in my lifetime. So it's not over and done, so I knew I'd have to address it in the contemporary story as well.
So there's a lot of research and horsey knowledge in this novel, and I was always sent to the dictionary, which is I love to do. I love to learn new words, and horse anatomy and withers and hocks and pastons and brown rime of barnyard dusk and founder, which is laminitis, I looked up. And do you ever worry about getting lost in the research? I mean, when is it too much?
Well, I kind of try to guard against that by not doing all the research not front-loading it. So I try and start writing the story and let the story tell me what I need to know, and then I go and find it out.
See, that's really wise.
Well, you don't want a big slab of something that you found that was so interesting you're just going to cram it in there. You know, I mean, there's one novel that is like just the sort of the archetype of how not to do it, because the guy obviously spent a lot of time learning about how to tune a piano for his novel, and you get to this bit where he's tuning a piano, and the owner of the piano says, "It must be really interesting to know how to tune a piano. How do you do it?" And then there's 10 pages on how to tune a piano, and I really want to avoid that.
But Moby Dick is like that, though, about everything to do with whales.
Well, I haven't finished Moby Dick.
Do you know what? I haven't either. Do you have a wall board with pins and red wool connecting various characters to each other, like detectives?
No. I'm very instinctive in my writing. I don't plan it out. I really just, I can't remember. I think it might have been Annie Dillard who described it as working along a seam of ore with a pick and not knowing if you're going to strike a rich vein or not. And so, and then somebody else, I can't remember who this was either, but said it's like driving on a dark night through fog and you can only see as far as your headlights. So you just go that far. And so that's what it's like for me. I'm not a great structurer and planner, and yeah.
There's a lot of horse philosophy in this book about, a good horse will work with you, won't mean you ill.
Yeah.
Or that you can trust them.
Some of them.
Yeah, well, that other one, not so much. But did I mean trust? I think I might have written something.
There are horses that you can have a wonderful, intense relationship with if they consent to do it. And, and then some horses have been so misused and so ill-treated that it's much harder.
Jarrett trusts the horse and knows the horse and has a kind of intimate relationship.
Yeah, well, Jarrett, as I've imagined him, based on people I read about, he grew up sleeping in a barn while his mother was working in the house looking after some white person's child. And so he learned horse language before he learned human language. So he understands them at a very deep level.
Can you read something for us?
Sure. This is Jarrett and his father the night that the foal that will become Lexington is about to be born. And the mare is Alice Carneal, which is the name of Lexington's mother. And she was named for the daughter-in-law of the owner, which is pretty... not sure, and she was a mean horse, so it's unclear what the what the father was trying to tell his son. Anyway, when they reached the barn, they found Alice Carneal strutting restless circles in her stall, her coat glistening with sweat. Harry and Jarrett took their places out of her line of sight. Harry spoke to her in a low, musical voice, almost a hum, telling her how good she was and how great her foal would be. The sound was soothing, and as the evening lengthened, Jarrett felt himself drifting in and out of a doze. He came awake to the splash of the mare's water breaking. She gave a low groan and folded herself gently into the bedding hay. Harry knelt beside her as the birth sac bulged. The tiny crescents of the hooves were clearly visible through the pearly membrane, folded daintily one atop the other, soles down in the correct position for an uncomplicated birth. Sure enough, when the forelegs were out almost to the knees, a slick, wet muzzle followed, the foal in perfect position, arranged like an arrowhead. "Here's the hard part," murmured Harry. "The shoulders, the widest part of the foal." He hummed on, encouraging Alice. He could see the little white hooves straining at the membrane of the birth sac. Minutes later, the sac split and the foal sluiced forward. A tiny horse slipped out onto the hay like a gift from a package. It was a bright bay colt, like its dam, with a white star and snip on its face and 4 white feet. Harry passed the cloth from the bundle across the stall to Jarrett, and the two of them gently toweled the slick little body. Alice nudged them aside, licking her foal all over. After a time, Alice rose gracefully to her knees, breaking the umbilical cord. Before she could stand, the colt was up, new legs splayed and trembling. "Never seen that before," said Harry. "The colt up on all 4 feet before his dam." Within minutes, Alice lay down again, nudging at her sides until the afterbirth came. Harry and Jarrett sat in companionable silence, watching Alice lick and nuzzle her baby. Finally, the colt found the teat, his small wet tail swishing as he tasted the rich foremilk. Harry sat back on his heels and gave a satisfied sigh. "Our work's done now, little as it was. He's a bit weedy, but we'll see how he does." "What about the white feet? Bad luck, ain't they?" Harry smiled as he gathered up the rags. "Some folk hold with that foolishness. Racing folk do have a mighty faith in luck. You can use that if you're smart about it. Push the odds up, push them down, or with some loose talk in the backstretch. My way of thinking, a good horse has no color. It's what's inside that's worth the fret."
So sort of economical and vivid, 2 paragraphs and you've got a foal being born. That's so fantastic. And, when I read it, I went, ouch, they come out feet first. And so, you sort of, involve the imagination, the body, everything together. That's really fantastic. Is it true that mares have the capability to slow birthing, so the foal will have the dark hours to find its feet and to be ready to run from a predator by dawn?
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
How do they know that?
How do they know that?
They just must have...
They always come in the night, so yeah, presumably.
They always come in the night. That is so amazing, isn't it? Your character Jess, the Australian scientist who works at the Smithsonian Museum managing their vertebrae osteology prep lab, gives you permission to do this research on how museums store and document their exhibits, and led you to some very interesting and smelly research. Because you never think, how do they get all that meat off the bones?
Well, I hadn't thought about it too much. And it turns out, you go to the Smithsonian Support Center. It's a massive place. It's literally miles of labs and storage pods full of some of the greatest artistic treasures and most valuable scientific artifacts in the world. And it's tucked away in suburban Maryland. And a corner of it is this osteoprep lab, and there's every kind of fancy piece of scientific equipment you can imagine, but they still clean bones by putting them in a room with a bunch of domestic beetles. And the beetles eat the flesh off the bones, and they haven't found a better way to do it because this doesn't destroy any of the tissue or the scientific information that the bones contain. So I was in the bug room, and it smells just about as bad as you would think. And there's a little snap, crackle, and pop sound of the munching going on, and yeah, that's how they do it.
Well, I think I should just warn you, if you've got some questions, think of them now, and I'm going to ask a few more, and then put your hands up when the time comes, and I will tell you when that is and not before. You've got some people with microphones, and they'll hand you the microphone, and you're not allowed to ask a question unless you have a microphone because nobody can hear it. Now, cards on the table, Geraldine. I think a novelist's only obligation is to write well about anything she wishes to explore in the whole world. And there is, at the same time, a sort of vocal minority, I would have to say, that wants to talk about appropriation of stories. No one else has written this story yet, and it's certainly been there for the taking. What were your thoughts about this?
Look, when I realized that, this was a story about race as well as a racehorse, I wanted to run 100 miles in the other direction because, I'm not stupid, I read. I knew this is a debate that we needed to have. I think it's an important debate. I think there are really serious questions about who gets to tell the story, and also if I tell the story, am I taking the space away from some other writer? So I could have just not written the book. So that was a serious possibility, and I did think about it, but I really wanted to write it. So I decided to, put my big girl pants on and keep going. But I talked to a lot of Black friends about it, and the best piece of advice I got was from Marlon James, who is a fantastic Jamaican-American novelist. And he said, the thing that gets me about books where the question of appropriation comes up is the appropriation is the least bad thing about the book, because usually it's just a really bad, lazy book and the author hasn't done the work. He said, so if you're going to do this, do the work. And so I tried to do the work, and if I haven't done the work, I'm sure I'll hear about it.
Have you had any pushback from those claiming it's not your story to tell?
Not really. I've had, one kind of scratchy essay in The Atlantic saying that my white characters get to grow and change more than my Black characters do. But that wasn't, she acknowledged that I'd kind of picked up the gauntlet here. But so once, I could have written the book another way. I could have centered the white owners. And they're very interesting characters. They're in there. Ten Brooks, a fascinating guy, and there were a lot of other ways to write it. But to do that would have been once again to erase the contribution of the Black horseman, and I wasn't prepared to do that.
I mean, one of your Black characters is sort of thinking about his relationship with some of the white characters around him, and says something like, "Oh, just a white woman, white womaning." And I was a bit miffed.
No, come on, tell me you haven't white womaned at some point in your life.
What a white
All
woman,
right,
white
so you're
womaning
walking
is.
down a street at night and there's a couple of young Black men. You don't grab your purse a little tighter?
A couple of young any men, I would grab my purse.
All right, but, think about it, because I think if you think about it, we all have these deeply ingrained, and we have to confront and root out I don't believe anyone who says they don't see race, I guess. And I think we need to look at our microaggressions and look at the ways we cause hurt without intending it.
So you also contrast the idea of race and class in the UK and the USA. Just tell me about that difference. One of the characters thinks that the racial issue in the US must be the same as the class issue in the UK.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's just somebody saying not everything has to be about race. It could be about class. So, living on Martha's Vineyard, the Black friends I have are a very privileged cohort. And I have learned from listening to their experiences that that is no protection from anything. I have a very distinguished filmmaker friend who was dragged out of her car on Shaney Walk in Britain and accused of stealing it because the racist cop didn't believe a Black woman would have such a fancy car. And then the most notorious people here probably even remember it, Professor Henry Louis Gates, not only a Harvard professor, but also a TV star, dragged off his own porch in handcuffs for the crime of trying to open his own front door one night. So, it's fruitless to say this doesn't exist, and it transcends class and education and no protection.
Who would like to ask a question now? Put your hand up, and if you don't have them, I've got other ones, so don't worry.
And don't be shy.
And Geraldine really likes you asking her question, she told me. I'll ask you. Oh, there's one at the back.
Here?
There. Oh, there's one there, yeah.
Hello. Firstly, thank you very much, and a wonderful presentation. My question is, you obviously have a penchant for research and you like history and that kind of stuff. Where do you draw the line between history and historical fiction? You said you were writing about a character and you didn't know much about him, so you created his story. So how do you make that decision as to whose story to create and where you draw the line between history and fiction?
So I try and follow the line of fact until it becomes too faint to follow. I love to, if I can find out something new and nail a fact, I get a tremendous satisfaction about that. I actually feel like with an earlier book, People of the Book, there was a lot of contradictions and a lack of clarity about what exactly had happened to the Sarajevo Haggadah when it was rescued from plunder by the Nazis, and I managed to nail that, and I was so proud of that because there had been so many conflicting accounts, and I just went back and found everybody who could possibly shed light on that story, and it was kind of like the work of a journalist, really. But I love to do that work. And then when you get to the point where you can't know, that's the privilege of being a novelist, and that's why it's so much more fun than being a historian, because you get to take the leap and say, maybe it could have been like this, and try and do it with as much plausibility as you can, based on as much research as you can, to get it as close to a plausible scenario for how it might have been.
We got another question.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. I was so excited to come to hear you speak. Just wondering, when you create your characters, do you think of the end point at the start, or does that just come, in a sort of organic way?
So, with historical fiction, it's kind of the lazy novelist fiction in a way, because you do have the arc of the story. You know what happened to many of the characters because they're actual historical figures and existing people. So your job is to get them there. But often there are things that you don't know, and with this book, I knew I had these 3 time periods that fascinated me, but it was a long time into the writing before I could clearly see where the connective tissue would be and what would draw all these stories together into one story. So you have to take some of it on trust and just keep writing and picking at that seam and working away at it and hope it comes clear to you.
Oh, okay, sorry. Hi. I was just wondering what kind of research you did to accurately portray Black people in that time period and the experiences they went through. Did you talk to people or read articles or anything like that?
Yeah, there's nobody to talk to about it, but there are oral histories in the Smithsonian, actually. There was, during the Depression, there was the Relief and Works program that sent a lot of writers actually into the South to talk to formerly enslaved people and get their stories. And you have to take many of them with a grain of salt because they're white interlocutors and maybe the subjects of the interviews aren't being entirely frank, but they're still very valuable. And you get a great sense of what mattered to people and also the idioms that they used. And so that's one way. There are a couple of there are a lot of references to the black horsemen in correspondence between the white horse owners, and you can tell that they deferred to the skills of these men. They're always saying, well, my heart wants me to do X or Y with this horse, and these, incredibly wealthy white plantation owners would take that advice, and so you get a sense of the special position that these men, and they were all men at that time, held within this brutal system, that they had a kind of prestige and a limited sort of agency that wasn't available to other enslaved people. And then you work on the hard labor of real historians, who've gone, into great depth looking at records and accounts. And, when you're working with people who were not allowed to become literate, you don't often get to hear people speaking in their own voices. They're just silenced in the historical record, which is one of the, great tragedies. It's true for enslaved people and indigenous people often, and women. There are no really good journals available written by women until the 1750s in America. So that's a lot of silent women on the historical record. And interestingly, where you can find these voices is often in court records where they took verbatim testimony, and people would be hauled in to be accused of some ridiculously picayune charge, but you would get the sense of their anger and their sense of injustice, and they're totally cognizant of how unjust the system is that they're finding themselves in. So that's one source of hearing voices.
I think we've almost got to the end of our conversation, but you mentioned Year of Wonders. Well, that was what you were talking about when you were talking about the
Vicars.
The Vicars, a novel of the plague. Thoughts about the global pandemic. I thought my thought went. My mind went straight to your book, which was written in 2001 about the other pandemic, the other plague. Do you feel like you were really set yourself up to know exactly how to behave in this plague?
Well, I was living on Martha's Vineyard, which is a pretty small rural community, so it was not dissimilar to Eam. But I'm sorry to have to report that instead of becoming all altruistic, the people of Martha's Vineyard in general were pretty shitty. That was a real us and them thing that happened in the early days, because we have a very small hospital. There are only 3 intensive care beds, and it wasn't like we'll quarantine ourselves to stop the spread of infection. It was, we're going to pull up the drawbridge and stop anybody coming here. And so people who did come to their second homes got a lot of stink eye. And I thought that was ridiculous. I really did, because, you're living in an apartment building in New York City with 1 elevator, or you could be on your 3-acre property. And most of the people, it died down because the people who came were incredibly responsible, and everybody did the right thing. And, and it's tragic. We had even 1 death, but we only had 1 death on the island, and that was quite recently. And it was somebody who had refused the vaccine. So,
yeah. Well, we're going to have a little rest now.
Okay, and some beautiful music.
And we're going to have some beautiful music. So we're allowed to leave the stage now, because to close our salon tonight, we're very fortunate to welcome to the stage Mindy Meng Wang, who's a Chinese-Australian composer and a world-class modern guzheng player. That's the ancient Chinese horizontal harp, which you can see here on the left. She was born and trained in China, studied Western musicology in the UK before emigrating to Australia. She's a contemporary pioneer of the guzheng. She introduces it into many Western musical genres, including experimental, jazz, Western, classical, electronic, and improvisation. So you can clap Geraldine Brooks, and you can also clap Mindy Meng Wang.
Hello, good evening. Today I will play two pieces of music and that I think that it would be wonderful for this event. First, the hidden history, I was thinking about that. This instrument actually has 2,500 years of a history. And if you've never seen this before or heard it before, today you're about to see a hidden history from you. But so the first thing I like to play is a traditional piece to tell you what it sounds like for over 1,000 years. Chinese music is very narrative compared with the Western music. I always think Chinese music is like, Chinese music always trying to tell a story or create an image in your head. So it's like a line, whereas Western music, you have chords, you have everything. It's more like a 3D structure. And this piece I'm going to play called High Mountain and Flowing Water. As you can see, it's about a mountain and water. So I invite you to close your eyes, if you like, to imagine you're surrounded by the mountain, and later on you will be floating in a lake or in a river on a boat. And I'm sure the music will help you to create your own mountain and your own flowing water. Thank you. So this is a very traditional piece of music. And Chinese traditional music are often played as written music. But when I started my modern practice, as you know, you've just heard, like I bring this instrument into many different kind of styles, like jazz, electronic, everything. And also one of my favorite thing is improvisation. So you actually create music for a special feeling, for a special event. So I would like to do an improvisation next to respond to what we have tonight, poetry and book. I think for poetry and book, I really enjoy read poetry and reading books. And because I think it's a conversation that you can have to yourself, with yourself. And it's just like music. Sometimes it creates a vessel for you, but how you understand that, how you interpret that, it's entirely depends on yourself. And so does music. So I want to play a piece of music to give you a space that you can unpack your own feeling and to find your own story in there. very much. And I'm really happy that I could share music with you all and share the stage with all the wonderful minds. And if you like to hear more of this music live, and this year you can go to Melbourne Recital Center, and in there, so I'm the artist in resident in Melbourne Recital Center this year, so I'll be bringing a lot different style of music on this instrument. If you're interested, check it out. Thank you. Thank you.